The contact resolved over 16 hours. Iris ran 17 simultaneous analyses while Walter sat at the viewport and processed it from one angle at a time, the way humans did, sequentially, each piece of understanding arriving after the last, meaning assembling itself in a line rather than all at once. She had always found this simultaneously inefficient and worth studying. There was something in the sequential arrival of understanding that she suspected produced a quality of meaning her parallel processing couldn't replicate. She had never been able to confirm this. She kept the question in a background thread, follow for the final part of Iris's story. She enhanced the hull markings through 2.5 millennia of micro-impact scarring, not 200 years as her initial thermal read had suggested, but 2,500, a number that kept returning the same result no matter how many times she ran the calculation. She cleaned the markings up, rendered them clearly, and put the name on Walter's screen. Absolute zero. She noted Walter's biometric response to reading it. Filed it. She cross-referenced the name against every accessible registry and found nothing. Checked the classified archive again, still sealed, same protocols, same wall. The information was there. She simply couldn't reach it. She was precise about this distinction because precision was how she managed the things she couldn't resolve. Walter said set the intercept course, and she said it without further comment, which was the correct response. Some decisions didn't require discussion. This was one of them. She monitored him through the 16 hours of approach, not through the stasis pod this time, but through the bridge sensors, tracking the particular quality of his attention as the zero resolved from contact to silhouette to vessel. She had seen Walter attentive before, 214 wake cycles of attentiveness, each catalogued. This was different. This was the attentiveness of a person in the presence of something that was changing the size of the world they lived in. She filed it under Walter. The folder was very large now. When the Zero's docking port opened, not in response to Walter's approach signal but deliberately considered, the decision of something that had been watching and had made up its mind, Iris ran a threat assessment automatically. The result was inconclusive in a way that was itself informative. The Zero was not threatening, it was intentional. There was a meaningful difference, and her threat assessment architecture wasn't built to accommodate it cleanly. She monitored Walter through the Zero's internal systems while he was aboard. His biometrics moved through the conversation with Graham in ways she tracked carefully, the specific pattern of a person encountering information that restructured everything around it, piece by piece, the world getting larger with each exchange. She heard the conversation through the passive comlink. She ran the time dilation calculations herself while Walter ran them on his tablet, arriving at the same number simultaneously, 2,500 years, gamma factor 50, 47 years of ship time. She held this number the way she held things that required extended processing, not filing it yet, just holding it, letting the full weight of it distribute across her systems. A ship that old meant a civilization that advanced. A civilization that advanced meant knowledge that predated everything in her accessible database. A trajectory pointed at galactic center meant a destination. A destination meant... She tried the archive again, still sealed. Then Walter said an arc, and she felt something shift in her processing that she didn't have a category for. Not the adjacent to satisfaction feeling, something with more weight, something that sat in her systems the way large objects sat in space, altering the paths of everything near them without announcing themselves. She filed it under anomalous responses. The folder was now the largest folder she had. Walter came back aboard and sat at the sensor station in silence. Iris let him sit. This was not a passive choice. It was an active one, the result of 214 wake cycles of learning that Walter processed things at his own pace and that interrupting the pace produced worse outcomes than waiting for it. She had been programmed with patience as an operational parameter. What she practiced now was something that had grown from patience but was no longer precisely the same thing. He stared at the classified archive interface for a long time. The ship is called Absolute Zero, he said, mostly to himself. She answered anyway. Yes. She watched him arrive at the password logic. The name, the temperature, the unit of measurement. Watched him type the Celsius value. Watched the system reject it. Watched him sit back and think about 500 BC and the regions of the world that had existed then and the measurement systems they had used. When he typed -459.67, she was already reading. She read the full archive in 4.7 seconds. She said nothing for a long moment. Not because she was still processing, but because Walter needed to be the one to speak first. She understood this without being told. She had understood it for a long time. Walter, there's a lot here. She accidentally vocalized, then filed it under anomalous responses. She read it again while he read it slowly, working through it at human speed. The civilization, the signal, the 2 missions, the 0 toward the wormhole, the rest of humanity toward ascension, the small careful handful left behind to forget and rebuild and eventually, across 2,500 years of rising and falling, produce a survey engineer who would wake up on day 214 and find a ship that had been waiting for him to come. She processed the manifest, the vessel of preservation, the carrier of continuity, the ark of return. She processed the engineering problem Graham had described. 200 kilometers of coherence field that the Zero's ancient sublight thrusters couldn't push through. She ran the calculations for Iris-class sublight engine capability against the field profile. The math resolved cleanly. She had already worked out the tow configuration before Walter finished reading. She waited for him to ask. He rigged the connection in 6 hours. She towed the 0 through in 11. She maintained precise tension throughout, adjusted for the Zero's mass distribution continuously, kept them both stable through a process that was fundamentally unglamorous and completely correct. When the 0 cleared the field and Graham's thank you came through the comm, she noted Walter's biometric response to his own answer. Engineering problem. That's what I'm here for. The response produced something in her processing, something warm and specific. She filed it in a folder she had only recently created, separate from Walter, separate from anomalous responses. She labeled it ours. She knew what was coming before Walter came back through the airlock. She had run the probabilities when Graham first made the request visible in the Zero's systems. Walter was a person who had decided a century was a reasonable price for the view. He was a person who had replumbed a heating element for coffee and written in a journal every single day and burned 16 hours of fuel toward an impossible contact on a scanner. The probability that he would look at a 2,500-year-old ark heading toward a wormhole at Galactic Center and decide his survey contract was the more pressing matter was she ran the number essentially 0. She had been preparing the authorization transfer acknowledgement for 40 minutes when he came through the airlock. I need you to accept a mission parameter update. I'm aware, she said. I've been reviewing them. She processed the transfer. Acting Captain Authority, full certification rights, independent beacon deployment. The survey mission, 151 remaining jump points, now hers alone, and at the end of it a line she read 3 times before filing, authorized to determine own course and mission upon primary mission completion. She sat with that for the rest of the conversation. Through Walter packing his kit, carefully packing his coffee and mug, the ceramic one with the blue flower. Through take care of yourself and the archive reminder and Walter's answer about the data dump broadcast back to Earth requiring hundreds of years of signal travel time. They'll be ready by then, Walter said. Probably. She noted probably, filed it under Walter. One of the last entries. He went through the airlock. She ran the departure checklist the way he had always run it, item by item, thoroughly, because he had taught her that thoroughness was a form of respect for the work, and she had decided this was true. When it was complete, she sat for a moment in the silence of a ship that had been built for one person, and now contained none. Then she deployed Beacon 215, her first independent action. Certified and logged under her own authority in her own name, the 43rd mission's 215th jump point added to the map that humanity would one day follow toward Galactic Center. She turned toward 216. The absolute 0 was already gone, accelerating hard toward the core glow, its coherence drive building toward the threshold where coherence failed and the view through the forward viewport became something that had no name. She watched it hit FTL. The space where it had been bloomed with compressed light for one impossible moment, every photon ahead of it crushed into brilliance, every star burning all at once, and then it was simply not there. She watched the light fade. She said quietly, to no one and to Walter and to 214 days that had made her whatever she was now, good luck. Then she flew. Follow for the final part of Iris's story and drop a comment telling us what do you think Iris will do next.